Good morning, everybody. Happy Tuesday. Have an amazing show for everybody today. What do we have, Krystal?
Indeed, we do. A lot of interesting topics this morning. So the Financial Times is writing that the U.S. is now just one big bet on AI. So how is that going to go for us? We will evaluate where we're at with all of that. Barry Weiss has officially been installed over at CBS as editor-in-chief. We'll take a look at what she is saying and what some of the journalists at CBS are feeling about that. It sure looks like we are headed to full regime change war in Venezuela. Some incredibly troubling reports that aren't getting nearly enough attention. We'll dig into all of that. Trump is floating, hey, maybe I will pardon Ghislaine Maxwell. This comes as the Supreme Court has declined to hear her appeal, so a lot to get to there. Tim Dillon speaking out against the National Guard deployments in a variety of cities, and I'm taking a look at what exactly happened with this shooting. An immigration agent shot a Chicago resident. The government story is falling apart. There's apparently body cam footage that directly refutes what they were claiming happened. So I'm going to do a monologue breaking down everything that we know about what transpired there.
There we go. We had, unfortunately, to drop the Mark Sanchez story, but we will eventually get to it. Don't worry.
We did address it. Yeah. It was a good plug for our premium subs.
That's true.
We did address it in the AMA yesterday.
Did address it in
so if you want to hear what Saagar thinks about the whole Mark Sanchez situation, which he is slightly obsessed with,
it's just
you have to be a premium subscriber.
I can't get enough of it. All right, so thank you to everybody. BreakingPoints.com, as Krystal said, if you want to hear our Mark Sanchez thoughts and much more, you can go ahead and sign up for that. If you can't afford it, no worries. Just please go ahead and hit subscribe to this YouTube video. And if you are listening to this on a podcast, please send your favorite episode to a friend and or rate us 5 stars. It really does help other people find the show.
And one more thing before we jump in, we got word from Ryan this morning. Alex Colston, that drop site journalist that was part of the Sumud flotilla, has been freed to Jordan along with most but not all of the American citizens who were on board that boat. So glad to hear that he at least is safely out of Israel.
That's right. And hope to get Alex on the show soon. We'll hear about some of his ordeal and what he went through. So let's go ahead and start with AI. Let's go ahead and put this up here on the screen. I thought this was a fantastic piece. Came out in the Financial Times. Rashir Sharma, somebody I really respect. And what he wrote about here is, quote, America is now one big bet on AI. It is seen as the magic fix for every threat to the U.S. economy. And I'm going to read what I think are the most troubling paragraphs. Quote, lately, optimism has become a self-fulfilling prophecy. The hundreds of billions of dollars investing in AI now account for an astonishing 40% of U.S. GDP growth this year. Wow. Some analysts believe that estimate does not even fully capture AI spend. Real share could be higher. AI companies have accounted for 80% of gains in U.S. stocks so far in 2025. That is helping to fund and drive U.S. growth as the AI-driven stock market draws in money from all over the world and feeds a boom in consumer spending by the rich. Since the wealthiest 10% of the population owns 85% of stocks, they enjoy the largest wealth effect when they go up. Little wonder then. Latest data shows American consumer economy rests largely on spending by the wealthy. The top 10% of earners account for half of consumer spending, the highest share on record since that data began. Without all the excitement around AI, the U.S. economy would be stalling out given the multiple threats. I thought that was such an important, just like succinct way of putting it together. He says, America has become one big bet on AI. Outside of the AI plays, even European stock markets have been outperforming the U.S. this decade, and now that gap is starting to spread. So far in 2025, every major sector, from utilities, industrials, healthcare, and banks, has fared better in the rest of the world than in the U.S. So Silicon Valley parlance is like in the world of bits versus the world of atoms, as in like something in cyberspace, something versus the real world. AI is honestly a bit of both, right? Because you have to make chips, you have to build data centers, but fundamentally the profit and everything else is a power law of exponential growth for stocks of a lot of the people who are involved. We all know it is not in any way distributed across the economy. And I thought that summed it up in a way that should honestly be terrifying, because something a friend of mine recently said to me was, if Trump did not have this AI boom, the tariff story would be a totally different conversation. I mean, it's still bubbling underneath, right? We talked about the farmer yesterday, soybeans. If you work in the, quote, normal economy and all of that, of course, you're going to feel it. I was just taking a look yesterday at the equal weight S&P 500 versus the weighted S&P 500. It's unweighted. It's crazy. If you just take like the equal weight versus, the NVIDIA heavy S&P and all these others, the gap in growth is unbelievable. And I think what it underscores is the fundamental danger of where we are in a variety of ways, from economic policy, because it's emboldening actually Trump on tariffs, because he thinks this is tariffs. He doesn't understand it's all like data center growth, AI growth, Google and everybody kind of spending to the bottom. But the second is, and look, I know, bubble talk is always easy and nobody knows when to call it. But at the very least, even if it's not a bubble or any of that, this is a huge risk. Like any portfolio, if the U.S. GDP is a portfolio, to say that 40% of your growth comes from a single sector, from not even just technology, from a single sector of that sector, you should be very afraid. And when 80% of the gains, which all of us rely on, let's say if you're in retirement, your 401k, that number's got to go up, and it's only going up from one place, which means it can go down from one place too. A single, we talked about DeepSeek style yesterday, .com, anything like that. 2007, I mean, we all remember, right? It can go south very quickly, and then it can go south for a long time. And I can guarantee you, while the gains may only go to the top 10%, that the losses will go to 100%.
That's the way that works.
Yeah, that's the way it all works.
That is the way that works.
Yeah.
Well, and it feels like we're sort of like damned if it works out well and damned if it doesn't work out. So obviously, if it ends up just to be like sort of worthless AI slop and the all the grand vision of what AI could be doesn't come to fruition, then you're going to have this massive crash. Our economy, like the perception of our economy, is so tied up with these dramatic stock market gains, divorced from the reality of the real economy that impacts most people day to day, that collapse would be absolutely devastating. And like you said, would have massive effects for everybody, whether you're heavily invested in the stock market or not. If the promise of AI does come to fruition, well, then you've got mass job loss and a need to completely rewrite the social contract. So that seems like, do you guys feel like the country's in a place where we could all get together and have a unifying discussion about what a new social contract might look like? Because I sure don't feel like we're living in that country. So that's why the landscape is so incredibly terrifying. Yeah. And, I feel like there is this has been so invisibilized. It's something that's bubbling below the surface, but there is so little attention being paid by the media to this incredibly massive, looming potential problem. And our economy, when they say that it's just one big bet on AI, like policymakers are just sort of like using AI as a bucket catch-all for any sort of problem that they see in the economy. So if they're worried about the debt and the deficit, once we get AI, like that's going to reduce costs, we're going to be able to figure it out. Or if they're worried about sticky inflation, so well, AI is going to increase productivity, so we don't have to worry about that. Every problem, we're falling behind in terms of like research and development. We're not what we used to be in terms of being the technological juggernaut. Oh, AI will fix that as well. Like it's this incredible wish casting placed on this technology, which is unproven at this point at best, and which has not demonstrated, the basic ability even to be profitable at any of these companies.
What also scares me is if I take a look at that piece and I say that every sector from utility to industrial to healthcare to banks is faring in the rest of the world in the US, what happens if we get into a serious war? Look at Russia. You think they have AI in Russia? Oh, yeah. You know what they have? Defense industrial base. A shitload of oil. That's what matters. That's the actual thing that matters. That's how you have GDP growth even when the entire world is going to cut you off. I mean, yes, China has an AI sector. They still have an unbelievable industrial sector. So many different, potentials that are coming out in the world, in the real world, that's actually manufacturing, building products on top of financialization, which if you read about how they conceive of the economy, they think that compounding stock growth is bad for the elite and divorces you from the real world. This is a direct line from Xi Jinping. He said, hey, stocks, they don't need to grow that much. We're not into that. We're into the world of the real. That's what we focus on. And that's how we got here. This is very, very scary stuff. Also, we talked a few days ago, I was with Ryan, Derek Thompson, shout out, did a fantastic interview. And what he said actually is that because the only growth right now in the US economy is coming from AI, it means that all private investment is flowing in that direction, which is directly then at it's a zero-sum game, right? There's only a certain amount of money. Well, that amount of money is only going to go where? To the AI, where the most compounding effect. So that means that, let's say you're a private equity giant or something like VC, anything, what you're going to invest in is where you're going to get the most return on your capital. Of course, that's your job. Well, that also means, though, that some guy who's running a construction firm, let's say he's built it to a $100 million company, he wants to take it to a $2 billion company. Nobody's investing in that because the margins are not going to be the same as some data center stuff.
Yeah.
I was reading this morning, let's go ahead and put A3, please, up on the screen. This OpenAI AMD deal. So I was reading about this. All right, so what happens is OpenAI and AMD have now, quote, announced a massive computing deal. New phase of the AI boom. The 5-year agreement will challenge NVIDIA's market dominance and gives OpenAI 10% of AMD if it hits milestones for chip deployment. So the way that this is structured, though, is so crazy. So basically, what happened is AMD was like, hey, OpenAI was like, we want X amount of chips. AMD goes, cool, give us $78 billion. And they say, well, how would you like to pay? I'm reading this from Matt Levine. He kind of writes up a script. Well, we were thinking we would announce a deal, and that will just add $78 billion to the value of your company. That should cover it. And AMD is like, oh, they go, you still have to pay. And they go, why? And they go, okay, why don't we pay you cash for the value of the chips, and then you have to give us that back in stock. And then when we announce the deal, the stock will go up and we'll get our $78 billion back. AMD goes, yeah, sure, let's do that. And so basically what happened is they gave them stock worth $35 billion. They took some cash, but then the value of the stock increased so much, it basically covered the cost of the cash that was put in. So it's a complete circular game. And they just did this with NVIDIA. I watched the same thing happen where NVIDIA is like, we're gonna spend $150 billion, and then the value of the stock goes more than $150 billion. Where is the reality? Where's the does this have anything to do with cash flow? No, it's just literally all expectations. And that's what's really scary about it. So put A2 up on the screen, just to underscore what you were talking about. There's a new Senate Democratic report. They said AI could erase some, quote, 100 million US jobs, 89% of fast food, 64% of accounting, 47% of trucking, all over the next 10 years. Keep in mind, trucking in particular is what worries me, because it's like one of the best ways for people who don't have anything more than a high school diploma to actually make some six-figure income. And it's one of those where, look, I'm not a Luddite. I'm not saying that all automation or anything is bad, but you obviously need to think about the disruptive effect of your economy. The promise is always, oh, well, that'll create so much wealth that they'll figure out something else. Oh, we used to have, people before the alarm clock, people would come and throw something at your window. I'm like, things. You guys think I'm joking? These are the actual things the libertarians say. They're not like wrong in a sense, but I'm like, yeah, I don't know. It seems a little different, It just seems a little bit different. And they're like, well, we used to have horse keepers when we all went around in ponies, but then the car opened up America. I'm like, just doesn't seem the same. That's just me. That's me. You can decide whether you think it is one-to-one.
Just to hold on that, because this is an argument that people genuinely make, and it's a reasonable one. You look at like the past, and you're like, oh, there were all these concerns about the Industrial Revolution and all these concerns about about the car, the automobile, and all this technological displacement in the past, and it ended up that there was a period of transition, and then there were new jobs that were opened up, and it was all okay. So we're gonna project from the past to the future and say it's all going to be okay. One of the things that is different is like if we just use the example of the automobile. Well, the automobile was replacing horses. AI is meant to replace humans. That's what's different. Like, this is not a technology to supplement human labor by and large. This, if you listen to what the creators themselves say, this is a tech that is meant to replace you. Just go out and look at, just as one example here, apocryphal example potentially, this AI actress who they designed, this like teen girl AI actress that apparently has agents lining up to work with her, and major studios are interested in her or whatever. Like, for capitalists, if you don't have someone who's gonna, complain and has to go to the bathroom and is gonna get sick and gonna have kids and have to deal with their kids and gonna unionize or whatever, like not having to deal with that, they're like, yes, great. Like, that is their goal. And that's what makes the potential job displacement here, I think, so much different than what we've seen in the past, and why you should take very seriously these sorts of numbers about the number of jobs that AI could displace. And again, so, that's if things go quote unquote well and AI lives up to its promise. If it doesn't live up to its promise, then we have this gigantic bubble and all of these billions, probably trillions of dollars that have been speculated on AI that is going to, lead to some sort of a collapse. So it's such an incredibly perilous situation.
Right.
And that's before we even get to the immediate resource taxation of AI development. There's this article in the Wall Street Journal about Elon Musk's development outside of Memphis. We can put A3 up on the screen here. And, this, of course, they locate this gigantic data center. I think this is the one that he calls the Colossus. Yeah, the Colossus 2 data center. Of course, it's located very close to these poor Black communities in Memphis. The residents there have complained about the noise. They've complained about, they feel that there are toxins that in the air since this thing started to go up. And you have reports across the country. This is actually something I'm worried about, of wells going dry because the AI centers use so much water. Of course, we've been really trying to focus here on the way that electricity prices are already going up in our home state of Virginia. 40% of energy generation already going to AI data centers. In North Carolina, they passed legislation to pass some of the costs from AI data center electricity onto consumers so that you are bearing the cost for this, even though you may not want it whatsoever. So, the resource drain here entailed in these things is just you can't even wrap your head around it. The amount of electricity that these things require is equivalent to large cities. It's absolutely insane.
Let me just underscore that.
Yeah.
Quote, labor crews hired by Musk's XAI were excavating power equipment on site, preparing to build a new plant capable of generating over a gigawatt of electricity, which was enough to power 800,000 homes. But that just shows you that you're going to need enough power for 800,000 homes in the city of Memphis?
Yeah.
And that's how much that they're already planning before they even have to draw from the grid. I actually think that types of investment like this need to be a municipal demand. So this is where I've gotten a lot of pushback from a lot of these AI people who are like, you shouldn't be advocating for censorship on the grid. You should be advocating for more power. I'm like, where have you been, bro? I'm the biggest nuclear guy that there is. Shut up. But if that's the case, then you people, if you're going to make all this money, then you need to invest massively it should be a municipal demand. If you come in, what's your power projection? You're building a power plant that is going to, at the very least, take care of some 75 to 80% of that. Mm-hmm. And so there's going to be some sort of tax levied to make sure that all of this extra electricity that you're demanding is going into, let's say, nuclear energy project, whatever, more oil and gas. I don't care where it comes from. It just needs to make sure that it's not being offset on the consumer, because the alternative is that right now they're, pretending to invest in some of this power generation. But as we all know, guys, power projects take years to come online. It takes them 6-7 years to make a new nuclear reactor site. That's even if you get the permits, which none of them have ever materialized more recently. So in the interim, what's going to happen? I have read that in some municipalities, there is a increased data center specific 267% electricity bill to people, to consumers, 267%. If you're on a fixed income or if you are a suburban household, that is devastating to your monthly nut. I mean, just think about that. It's like gas price, for example. If there was a 267% increase there, you have to pay it. I mean, you can only cut so much whenever it comes to, turning the lights off or any of that. That's not going to do very much when you have such a massive increase. That is what worries me the most. And actually, politically, things are going in the opposite direction, where in fact, the state legislators are all getting paid off by Amazon and Google and all these other people, NVIDIA, and they're like, oh, it's going to create 10,000 new jobs. I'm like, yeah, construction jobs in the interim. Great. I don't bemoan that. I think it's fine. But how is that going to roll into the rest of the economy? What are those types of jobs? Are they actually going to be distributed? Because it seems to me that the absolute vast majority of the profit keeps rolling up to the Oracles, to the Larry Ellisons, to the Elon Musk, to Amazon, and to all these other folks. And we don't see how any of this is actually materializing yet in the real world. Let's put A4 up on the screen. If you want to know where money sees opportunity, what was I talking about earlier? Yep. BlackRock is on the verge of buying, quote, Aligned Data Centers, a massive data center construction company, a deal valued at some $40 billion. That is the value prop that they see in just data center construction. And if BlackRock owns it, that means the money is not going to you, it's going to private investors. Let's go to the next part here, and this is about the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission that has voted to let BlackRock buy a company that actually runs Minnesota Power. More Perfect Union did a segment on it. Let's take a listen.
BlackRock bought Global Infrastructure Partners, which is a big investment fund that itself buys up things like water and waste systems, transportation companies, and even large shares of entire airports. If you've flown in or out of London, congratulations, you're probably a customer of GIP. So BlackRock owns Global Infrastructure Partners, which is trying to buy Elite, which owns Minnesota Power, which owns infrastructure like power plants, dams, and the land they're on. Usually when private equity and asset managers buy stuff, they just do it behind closed doors. But because people would literally die without power, it's considered a critical service, and therefore a regulated monopoly under Minnesota law.
BlackRock doesn't necessarily have the same amount of reporting responsibilities as a publicly traded corporation. We've had a lack of transparency already regarding our rates and the quality of services in our community in Superior. That ability to access that data would be decreased by the purchase, which would be a huge problem.
The community has made it clear that they oppose the deal, and a judge has already recommended against it. But it doesn't end there. The final approval is going to come from the Public Utility Commission, a board made up of just 5 people appointed by the governor. This could have huge implications for anyone who uses basic utilities like electricity or water, i.e. the things that keep us from freezing to death in the woods. Because if they realize it's profitable, nothing will stop them. And this kind of thing has happened before in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan with a power company called UPCO. This is Alyssa Jean Schaefer, the Director of Climate and Energy at the Private Equity Stakeholder Project.
If we look at northern Michigan, there's a utility called the Upper Peninsula Power Company, or UPCO. This was acquired by a private equity firm in 2014.
UPCO customers have seen a spike in their rates many say they can't afford.
After the private equity firm took it over, shortly thereafter, they raised the bills. A couple of years later, bills went up again. Then that private equity firm sold it to a different private equity firm. Once the new private equity owners were in control, they raised bills again. Since 2014, UPCO, being owned by private equity, has seen 4 bill hikes.
And where do you think that that's going, and to whose benefit? You can see exactly how it's all happening. And I mean, the fakery of it, as I described in that OpenAI AMD deal, it just seems very key. And I just think we all have to just grapple with, again, for what? To what benefit? I hear all the time about productivity gains in the white-collar workplace. Great. I'm against meetings, I'm against bulletins, and all this list, nobody more than me. I don't know how the slackers out there are all doing it. And I don't mean that you are a slacker, I'm saying physically
people on a Slack channel.
Slack channels for people who can bug you at any hour of the day. But you also see the consumer side effect of this, where it's unscrupulous and it's crazy. So friend of the show, Seth Harp, put this up here on the screen, craziness. So he shows that people on Amazon have AI'd his book and are selling it there. I guess either pulling the text from Google Books or something like that, and they're able to set up some sort of drop ship where you have an AI knockoff of the book versus the genuine piece. As he says here, quote, "We need to rise up and stop the tech industry by force. Our livelihoods, our culture, and our ecological environment are worth fighting for." I am deadly serious. I like his energy. But what he points out is that his book actually explicitly states that he has a copyright proviso. It cannot, according to his copyright, be fed into AI systems. But instead, what's happened is somehow somebody's been able to do that, and they've been able to explode everywhere online. And what I think also is very crazy is that this is just one of the more high-profile examples because the Fort Bragg Cartel was such a popular book. I saw other authors show that their books also had, quote, AI competitors when you search for it. You also had this instance where immediately after the whole Charlie Kirk thing happened, that there were these weird books that started going everywhere, like in terms of biographies of Charlie. So
there were even some that were like, everything we know about Charlie Kirk's assassination.
That's right.
That popped up like, immediately because some AI entrepreneur, quote unquote, fraudster, really saw the opportunity, saw that there was a lot of public interest, and just said to, ChatGPT or whatever, write me a book about what we know on Charlie Kirk's murder. spun that thing up immediately, and instantly it's up on Amazon. Like,
Exactly.
it's insane.
Let's
It's
go and
just
put that on
total
the
slop.
screen, can we? It is A8, please, just to show everybody. So you can see these AI slop books about Charlie Kirk's assassination ignited conspiracy theories online, like you just said, about PSYOPs. I mean, look, this is my biggest concern. And in fact, what we have talked about with Sora, the amount of AI videos that are now just explicitly going viral about, you know, there's the famous ones that are boomers, but I saw a few yesterday. People send them to me now because they know that I'm interested. And it's like a woman trying to save her son from a crocodile getting eaten. It's uncanny valley where I can tell, but I mean, if no offense to our older audience, but if you're like 50 or 60, I could see how you fall. They have tens of thousands of views.
Yeah.
Like, they're going everywhere. And the reason why they churn this stuff out is because they can churn an unbelievable amount of slop. If even a couple go viral, let's say it can cover the cost of what the generation is, and then you do that at scale forever. It's a classic content business where they only need a few of these things, you know, to actually to go viral. I've seen
Apparently this is like I'm not really on Facebook,
Yeah.
but apparently this is like most of what Facebook is at this point, because that's where the boomers congregate.
That's right, true.
So they would be vulnerable to it, and it's just like AI slop generated by fake AI accounts served to other fake AI accounts that, you know, are then some percentage of boomers are also taken in by. I myself enjoy a good cat video. I was watching some
sure.
cat video
Who doesn't?
TikToks yesterday, and I realized, I was like, I don't know if this is real or not. I mean, it's pretty low stakes when you're talking about a cat video, but when you're talking about, you know, something serious, which any of us could imagine, you know, a political figure or whatever, then it's a different deal. It's very destabilizing for our shared understanding of reality. And it's already good enough that we're at that point, even though, you know, a trained eye can tell most of the real from the fake.
Exactly. And let's continue here. A8C, please. This was from Robin Williams' daughter. I thought it was actually such a nice message where she says, quote, "Please stop sending me AI videos of dad. If you have any decency, stop doing this to him and to me, to everyone even. Full stop. It's dumb. It's a waste of time and energy. Believe me, it is not what he would want. To watch the legacies of real people be condensed down to this vaguely looks and sounds like him, so that's enough. Just so other people can churn out horrible TikTok slop. Puppeteering them is maddening. You are not making art. You are making disgusting, overprocessed hot dogs out of the lives of human beings, out of the history of art and music, and then shoving them down someone else's throat, hoping they will give you a little thumbs up and like it's gross. And for the love of everything, stop calling, quote, it the future. AI is just badly recycling and regurgitating the past to be reconsumed. You are taking in the human centipede of content, and from the very, very end of the line, all while the folks at the front laugh and laugh, consume and consume. So that is from Robin Williams' daughter,
Very thoughtful.
Zelda. Really appreciate that from her. Hey, if you like that video, hit the like button or leave a comment below. It really helps get the show to more people.
And if you'd like to get the full show ad-free and in your inbox every morning, you can sign up at breakingpoints.com.
That's right. Get the full show, help support the future of independent media at breakingpoints.com.